I'm Sarah. Let's talk about intersectionality. This is slightly problematic, but we're getting better. Intersectionality is a theory, and you can use it to guide your ways of thinking in or out of an academic context. Intersectionality is an established theory in academia, but has become recently popular in social justice movements today. We'll talk about where intersectionality came from, what it means, and go through some examples. Intersectionality was first coined by Kimberly Crenshaw, a professor and lawyer, in a 1989 paper. Crenshaw identified several cases in which Black women were facing discrimination. The law only allowed them to claim racism or sexism, not both. And Crenshaw was like, no, this is definitely both. And she began writing about intersectionality. Black women are sometimes excluded from feminist theory and anti-racist policy discourse because both are predicated on a discrete set of experiences that does not accurately reflect the interaction of race and gender. Because the intersectional experience is greater than the sum of racism and sexism, any analysis that does not take intersectionality into account cannot sufficiently address the particular manner in which Black women are subordinated. In other words, people are complicated. We don't have a singular identity. It's convenient and sometimes even helpful to see patterns and shortcuts within groups. But to be a good anthropologist, you have to remember that people have layers and experiences that won't fit into whatever predetermined boxes you have come up with. And it's easier to remember if you're always looking at your world with an intersectional lens, or a prism, as Crenshaw likes to say. First and foremost, intersectionality is just a metaphor. As a metaphor, intersectionality is incredibly flexible and isn't limited to a singular race or gender. In fact, you can, and should, calibrate intersections for age, socioeconomic class, people with disabilities, immigration status, geographic location, etc. All you have to do is figure out where people intersect, metaphorically speaking. Is intersectionality the discrimination Olympics? No thank you. It is not. That would imply that we're interested in taking power away from people, inverting the power triangle, and ruling over the previously powerful as they once did. Intersectionality is really about challenging the power of the hierarchy until everyone has a fair and decent shot, regardless of what they are. It'll matter far more who you are than what you are. That's the dream, anyway. Until then, stigma and stereotypes still very much matter. Dr. Patricia Hill Collins has written extensively on intersectionality throughout her career. She's a sociologist, and it's totally okay for anthropologists or anyone to borrow theory from another department. Think of it as another form of intersectionality. I find her take on stereotypes particularly helpful. She describes stereotypes as controlling images that are designed to make racism, sexism, poverty, and other forms of social justice appear to be natural, normal, and inevitable parts of everyday life. And they do serious damage to the groups being portrayed. Stereotypes are convenient, but they're sloppy and harmful, and we can do better. Let's go to Broadway for a minute. There are plenty of stereotypes to choose from in theater, but we're going to look at one show that broke a lot of them. Hamilton. Hamilton is Lin-Manuel Miranda's 2015 musical about the American Revolution and the early years of the United States government. Like many retellings, Hamilton blurs the line between history and the historically inspired. Hill Collins explains, this is not just a multi-racial casting of the same old story. Instead, what Lin-Manuel Miranda in Hamilton had the nerve to do was write a hip-hop opera about the founding myth of America. For Miranda, a simplified intersection would be at his Puerto Rican identity and his New Yorker identity. Where they happen to meet is at his gift for storytelling. This is not to say that Hamilton doesn't have problematic themes and erasures, because it does. But it is a highly visible example of why decolonization is an ongoing, never-ending, and extremely worthwhile endeavor, because we can always be a little bit better than last time. 30 years after Crenshaw published her first paper on intersectionality, social justice, politics, and even academia has molded the theory beyond its original intent. Crenshaw clarifies that her theory is not identity politics on steroids. It is not a mechanism to turn white men into the new pariahs. It's basically a lens, a prism, for seeing the way in which various forms of inequality often operate together and exacerbate each other. We tend to talk about race inequality as separate from inequality based on gender, class, sexuality, or immigrant status. What's often missing is how some people are subjected to all of these, and the experiences are not just the sum of its parts. One place I see intersectionality compiling within a person and in a group is in the cross-disability community. Cross-disability meaning that we all work together regardless of what our individual disabilities may be. My experience is with a family member who will remain purposefully vague, even though we have the same ethnicity, hometown, socioeconomic status. Their experience will always be distinctly different from mine because of their disability. Disability is something that, for better or worse, brings people together from just about every background. So how do we, in Hill Collins' words, act out of conscience and not convenience? Hill Collins specifies conscience and convenience as the difference between allyship and exploitation. Allyship is when non-oppressed people dig into the struggles of their peers and risk similar discrimination. Exploitation is borrowing their struggles for personal use without risking anything. Convenient stereotypes normalize damaging ideas instead of helping us grow out of them. It is not enough to cast a black character in a stereotypically black role, whether that's in a movie or the director of diversity and inclusion. Stop using basic glass when you could be using a prism. Are you ready to try intersectionality in real time? Think about where you live, and then think about the people indigenous to where you live. Land is a tangible manifestation of the intersectionality metaphor. What's not a metaphor is decolonization. That's going to be a team effort. A beginner step into decolonization might look like going to native-land.ca and learning on whose land you're living. Once you've done that, look to see if the indigenous people in your area need support, whether it's donations, purchases, or just likes. If you're looking for organizations with a national or international impact, you can go to our website. Just look under the Acknowledgement tab. That's it for intersectionality this time around. We covered a brief history with Crenshaw. We looked into meeting with Hill Collins, and we went over some everyday examples with Hamilton, the cross-disability community, and Indigenous land. If you want to follow up on anything I quoted, the citations are in the bottom of the blog, linked in the description. And we have an ongoing bibliography on our website. If you want to continue the conversation with me or anyone at Slightly Problematic, contact us at slightlyproblematic.net or on social media using @slightprob.net. I'll see you next time.